Sunday, so obviously right before the deadline day stuff really started kicking in, and I'm pretty much the last sentence Adam said was, I don't see there being any kind of like unknown entities being signed anytime in the next 2 days. We've had the same names, and within about an hour, that SEMA fella pops up on the timeline and it's like, yeah, he's signing for us tomorrow. It's like, cool. Podcast hasn't even posted yet.
In my defense, he went straight out on loan, so I'm not even counting him.
That's all of our signings, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, every single one.
All right, people. Hello, welcome to episode 140 of Together BHA. My name is Josh. And I'm joined by my two co-hosts today, as usual. Rising from the grave himself, we've got Adam and Craig as well in Chicago. How you doing, guys?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, mate.
Feeling good over the not COVID flu that I had.
Good. And let's get straight into it. Guest for today, Aidan J. Wood. How are you?
Hi, guys. Good to be here. Very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Good to have you. You've done a little bit of everything. Sports reporter for Metro Sport, Brighton and Hove Albion correspondent and scheduler for latest Brighton, ex Sky Sports News, and CGTNE Europe, China State affiliated media.
Yeah, it's a China State news company. So started off at Sky pretty much straight after I left college. Managed to get a break there through work experience and moved on to freelance stuff, and now working primarily at the Metro, which doesn't really involve Brighton, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing. But I still do a little bit for the local TV channel, and yeah, I like getting involved. I'm a Brighton fan, so I like getting involved in transfer lines, whether or not it's going to a company or not. So
that's cool, though. Are you a Brighton fan?
I am a Brighton fan ever since I was a kid. With Dean Days, I was there. So yeah, I personally. I know last year I was at a lot of the games as a journalist, home and away, but I primarily like going as a season ticket holder to especially home games, just because I like the atmosphere better. I can still report the games from there, and yeah, prefer it in the stands.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Deadline day has just passed. Obviously, people were hoping it was going to be a very busy day on the Albion front, with the obvious "we want a striker" rhetoric going all across social media and just about every place you could hope to hear it. You started off at Sky, and just before we went live, you said that you were kind of working on the deadline day stuff there. I guess, like, let's just get straight into that. What is that like? And Jim White with his yellow tie. Do people roll their eyes as much behind the camera as we do in front of it?
First of all, it's crazy. It's mental. Obviously, there's usually on a non-COVID situation, and Sky have turned into this kind of trying to be as green as possible by not going to the training grounds and stadiums. Obviously, you usually have 20 different reporters out elsewhere in Premier League grounds, stadiums, training grounds, wherever they can be, kind of thing. And then obviously you have Sky in Italy, Sky in Germany. It's a huge logistical nightmare, and obviously nothing ever goes to plan because someone leaves their post and then all of a sudden, say like West Ham are signing someone. I know when Brighton, I was working on the deadline day when Brighton tried to get Vincent Janssen. Do you remember, from Tottenham on loan?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, his career's turned out to be great, but he rejected us at that point, which was great. But yeah, just crazy. It's just it's an amazing thing to be a part of, but also you just kind of at the end of it, you just want to collapse. Jim White, yeah, he's a good bloke. Jim White, he kind of divides opinion at anywhere he goes. You know what you see on the screen is what you get with him off camera. He's just a genuine bloke, but kind of divides opinion. To I'm guessing until he'll be 70, 80, he'll be doing the same thing on TalkSport or wherever else he goes.
Were you pre or post Peter Odemwingy's transfer deadline day turning up at Loftus?
So I was post that, but the reporter that was on it, Aidan McGee, is a very good friend of mine. So I still speak to him. I spoke to him today, actually. He's just left Sky, but he's a big QPR fan. So I think he was hoping that Odemwingy was going to add a little bit, but yeah, obviously that was one of those, isn't it? There's
Still one of the best ones at deadline day, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
Really?
Harry Redknapp rolling down his window every year.
Yeah,
It's there's a lot of funny things that have happened, and it's it wouldn't be the same. I don't think it's the same as it was even when I was there. Now it's kind of died off a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the Man City effect too, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think
Stop spending so much money late.
It's not really. Yeah, teams have got better. The way they recruit now is completely different to how they used to. Obviously, you still got the teams like West Ham who are slightly better now, but they still kind of do just go in on deadline day and just say we want him, and just try and get whoever they can. Palace sometimes are like that as well. But I think this year, especially with COVID, etc., logistically wise, I don't think you can just say we want him today and fly him over and get medical done because all the restrictions are in place. So it's just it's a very different window this year. But yeah, you still saw some impressive deals done all across the world, but mostly there wasn't really any complete shocks on deadline day, especially in the Premier League. Like Griezmann to Barcelona, but that wasn't really.
Well, and that nearly everyone thought it didn't happen, right? And then it came out 15 minutes later or whatever. Then they did actually get the paperwork in, so that was a really back and forth one.
Yeah, La Liga are always very strict on paperwork, whereas the Premier League give you like if you have the deal almost done, you can then get a deal sheet to extend the period. But yeah, La Liga are strict. You saw with David De Gea a few years ago.
The infamous fax machine.
Yeah. I worked that one as well. That was fun. But yeah, it's an incredible transfer window this year. But I think there's been better ones, if I'm honest.
Can I ask you? Oh, go on, Craig.
Oh, sorry, mate. Go on. I'll hold.
No, I was just going to very quickly say, speaking of clubs that maybe don't do a great job with transfers at the moment or seem a little clueless, you follow Arsenal for your work a lot, don't you?
I do, yes.
How are things going there? What's your general take? We obviously have a slightly vested interest in. We like to follow Ben White's current escapades, but what's your deal then?
They've also had a long-standing interest in Bissouma, which is obviously one that, as a Brighton fan myself, I want to stay clear of. But unfortunately, it continues to keep cropping up, especially with only 2 years left in his contract. But Arsenal's transfer window this year, especially, has been completely different to anyone they've ever done before. They've tried to change how they've recruited players. They're just trying to buy 20 to 23-year-old players with high potential for relatively big money. Obviously, you see Ben White, Odegaard. People know what he's about. Aaron Ramsdale, for me, is a bit of a weird one. 30 million for a goalkeeper that was
maybe a backup keeper as well, right?
Well, there's rumours going around at the moment that he could start against Norwich on the weekend. So that'll be an interesting one to see what happens with Leno, because his contract's up at the end of the season, Leno. So it might just be that they signed him now to kind of integrate him into the side or into the squad, and then he'll be starting next year. But yeah, obviously Arsenal have had a very tough start to the season. I think it's been a little bit skewed with all the illnesses and injuries they've had. Obviously Ben White's been out, Aubameyang, Lacazette, all the kind of pretty much the core of their team has been ripped from them. So they've been playing with a lot of Pablo Mari and Cedric and Chambers and stuff like that. But they're very difficult. It's a very difficult window to judge, considering they spent over 150 million on players that I look and see and think that they haven't really strengthened their current team, if that makes sense. Like they potentially 5 years down the line they could all be world beaters, but right now they're no better than what they already had.
Yeah.
So I think my question was more around just the journalism stuff and how, I guess, social media sort of warps everything. So in terms of the last couple of years, what you'll see is that there are no surprises anymore. And if they do, they come out a couple of days early. So you've been doing this for a bit and bits and pieces. Have you seen any difference between now and, say, 5 years ago, where there would be a shock on deadline day and all of a sudden Odin Wingy's at Loftus Road and nobody knew about it? It's just one of those moments that happens. Whilst nowadays, everyone seems to know 2-3 days in advance, and it's more of a confirmation than it is an actual shock signing. So has anything significantly changed, or is it just purely social media just having a one-up? Yeah,
you're right. There's very rarely. I think the only one that I remember really was Well, Adam Lallana last year was a bit of a shock. Joel Veltman was definitely a shock. No one expected that to happen until it literally did. But yeah, you're right. There's very, very few deals that don't really get the airtime anymore. And I think you're right in terms of people on Twitter. There's so many fan accounts. There's so many people trying to be journalists that, like, not being rude, they're not journalists, but they're like invested in their team and kind of know people within the club or whatever. And then they have nothing riding on if they just pump out, say, like their mates told them, their mate who's the physio at the club, or like the ticket man at the club tells them that they're signing a player, they can just chuck that out on social media without any kind of remorse. So, and then that's how things start. And then, it's quite a simple thing for someone else to pick up on it, to check it. For, say, like if you look at the London clubs, etc., like you look at like David Ornstein, the Athletic, his contact book's ridiculous. So as soon as he sees something like that, or someone else picks up a rumor, they can then check that, and then they can confirm it, and it's not a secret anymore. So yeah, it comes from social media. It's just massive now. You always used to see people relying on the big journalists, whereas now people just kind of pick up from fan accounts and then check it themselves, and it's just a completely different fish now. I think transfers has gone from one level to a completely different level now. I think it's the biggest thing probably in football. I think more people care about who they're signing than potentially how they're doing on the pitch.
I think it resonates with Brighton quite a lot, really, in terms of that. But it's more just catching your opinion that, you know, obviously the spread of misinformation on all of these social media accounts. Does it feel like you're more of a fact checker at this point in time, especially when it comes to deadline day? Because you're talking about David Ornstein there in terms of, okay, you're just checking all of the false information to see if one of them's true. You know, how do you keep something under wraps so it doesn't get to the dirt sheets and it doesn't get to social media?
Yeah, you're right. It's not easy. You kind of learn to which kind of people to kind of check and not. I tend to check with people that aren't involved directly with the club, because the club like to keep everything under wraps, and fair enough, and that's their own opinion. And then when I feel like I've got something that's reasonable or strong, then I will then run that through the club. Sometimes they don't say either way, but that's their decision. And we know what Brighton are like with transfers and with anything really. Look at any kind of, like, we haven't heard a single player has caught COVID or anything like that. Whereas other people are reporting their things on, like, you look at Arsenal, they've just done a list of players that have caught COVID and when they're back and when they're, etc. But yeah, it's not easy to keep things under wrap anymore, because just as soon as one person gets it, especially if it falls into the wrong hands, it just goes into complete craziness. And there's always going to be Twitter rumors of people just completely making things up. There's look at Brighton stuff. There's so many players in each window that just people just make up. It's not just people making up; agents make things up as well. So you look at this that Genk striker, Paul Onuachu or something like that, I think his name was.
Don't get Josh started on that.
Is he a big fan?
He's obsessed with
Massive fan. I'm honestly pretty sure I started that entire train. Aiden, I'm really
He gets
sorry.
5% from the transfer.
Go for it.
I last November I was doing a pod, and we were doing like Premier, like, strikers that could come in, because it was when we were really starting to fire blanks, and I was just like dicking around in like the other leagues, and I was like looking at different players, and I was like, holy shit, he's scored like 23 in 20 games. And then I was looking at him, and I was like, and then I watched, like, the next month or so, I watched every Genk game, because I was just like bored, and that's the kind of loser I am. And I was like, my God, like, he's an absolute beast. And I was like, he should play for us. I was like, that's it. I'm going to peddle this propaganda until the end of the summer transfer window. And that's what I did. And yeah, that may well have been slightly my fault.
No, to be fair, his agents were in England trying to sort a deal for him, but I think other kind of intermediaries were just kind of saying, just kind of picking out. This is what happens when players are trying to find moves, is they just kind of throw names in the hat, hoping that more names will be interested, because they think, oh, say West Ham and Brighton are interested in him, maybe that's someone we should look at. Obviously, it didn't work out well to him because he's still in Belgium, but it does sometimes happen. You look at the Arsenal, the signing on deadline day, the Japanese international. He was offered to basically every club in Europe. It sounds like definitely in the Premier League. And Arsenal kind of needed a right back, even though the guy doesn't really play right back, and they got him.
Yeah, it's weird, like because it felt like such a West Ham signing too, the Onuachu fella. It does feel like the kind of player that West Ham would go out on deadline day and go and sign. Like 6'7", big lad, scores for fun in a random lower league. Like I was like, that's just a West Ham signing all over. So I was really worried he was going to go there, but he didn't. In terms of like you and growing up in this last couple of years, as like the social media has gotten wilder and wilder, and personally, I blame politics for spreading it across the rest of the sphere, to be honest. But how do you cope with deadline day and the transfer window in general? Because I imagine during the season, when the transfer windows aren't open, your job, albeit not an easy one, is probably a great deal quieter than the summer and the winter transfer window. And I mean, you only need to go online now and like look at people, like look at any journo on there, like poor Richie. Like poor Richie Mills, he even said like 2 weeks ago, he's like, I've been doing this for like 8 months. I don't know anything yet. I don't have a single source out there, but I get like 45 messages a day. Like, when are we signing a striker? What's the news on the striker? Do you have anything on the striker? Like, how do you deal with that sort of just like demand and like that deluge of like messages?
So at the beginning of the window, I kind of was reading every single comment, every single thing, and just kind of in the end I had to turn notifications off, because every tweet I got was, is Ben White done yet? By just a barrage of Arsenal fans, is Ben White done yet? And then since Ben White, it's been any chance of Basuma moving to Arsenal this summer. And like I will, like, they know, well, I hope they know that if I heard anything or saw anything, then I'd update them. But it's kind of just a barrage of the same message over and over again. And again, when's the striker coming? That kind of thing. It's not easy, but you kind of have to live with it. Unfortunately, it's part and parcel of social media now, I'm afraid.
We should probably ask you then about the striker, just to add on to those few hundred messages that you got. How close were we with any one of these strikers? Because Nunez was the one that kept coming up. It sounds like that died 3 days plus from the window closing. So how close were we to any of these guys?
Yeah, so in all honesty, I don't think very close. They're obviously their recruitment is so clear to me that they want specific players, and if they're not going to improve the current squad or what they want in a player, then they're just not going to improve the squad. You look at how Graham Potter has said all throughout the window about he'll continue looking, see if anyone can improve the squad. Then they'll look, but they've been wanting Darwin Nunez for 2 years now, since he was at Almeria. He left to Benfica for Champions League football, had an okay season. They wanted him again this summer, Brighton. Nunez again wasn't too keen on the move, but Brighton for some reason continued to try. And in the end, they didn't get anywhere near close to Benfica's valuation of him. Benfica were clear throughout that was the price. 40 million euros or thereabouts was the price that they'd have to pay, and that's quite a lot of money for a kind of pretty much unproven striker. Scored a few goals in Almeria and 10 in the Portuguese league, so it's kind of he's got a good potential, but what we've seen is not what £40 million is worth, in my opinion. I for one am a bit surprised with. Well, I know everyone is, but as a Brighton fan myself, just leaving kind of three currently fit strikers for the whole season. We know Danny Welbeck will potentially, touch wood, not get injured, but we know his history is not good on that side of things. We know he can score goals when fit, but how long he stays fit is another matter. I'm so gobsmacked that Aaron Connolly is still at that club. I mean, not at that club, but I mean in terms of not gone out on loan. He for me,
even his national team manager said he should go on loan.
every time I see him, he just needs confidence. Like, he's not going to get confidence missing from 3 yards in the Premier League. He just needs to. Like, that's the worst thing to ever happen to him, was score 2 goals in his Premier League debut against Tottenham. If he went out to, I don't know, Barnsley or someone, like QPR, I don't know, like anyone really in the Championship, scored 20 goals and come back, you see a complete different player, I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
I think he's just stuck in this kind of rut. I think his attitude, you can see, is not the greatest in terms of few misdemeanors off the pitch as well. But yeah, he cries out to me that needs some confidence. And I'd personally have sent out Connolly on loan and kept Zakiri. Because neither of them are really going to do, like, even if you put Zakiri on, he's not going to do too much different to what Connolly's doing at the moment. Connolly's got 4 Premier League goals in 2 seasons. So there's not going to be any too much difference there, and I think Connolly would benefit much more from a season away than what Zakiri does, because by all accounts they love Zakiri's attitude off the pitch and how he works hard, and they think he's going to be a great player. But yeah, going back to the striker, we weren't pretty much close. And Simmer, I heard the Simmer news the night before deadline day. Speaking to people in Czech Republic and the club they were buying from, it was all tied up the day before, really, apart from personal terms. But I heard that he was going to stay. Obviously, Brighton had their own thought about it and decided to send him out on loan to Stoke, which can understand it, a 20-year-old, but you can't be loaning out all these players if you don't have enough reserves in your own tank. You look at how Chelsea do it. We're doing similar to what we're doing now is what they're doing. And unfortunately, Chelsea have over £1 billion worth of players in their actual squad, and Brighton are a little bit lower level than that.
You could argue our forward depth is a little worse than Chelsea's. Yeah, I could agree with you there. Yeah.
I'm not just talking our forward depth. I'm talking in terms of how everywhere. Yeah, you look at how we do it and look at how Chelsea do it. I'm just comparing how we've sent out, 19 players out on loan this summer. I'd look at Chelsea and probably say they've done about 30, which is a little bit more, but it's the same kind of recruitment and their strategies. And we can't do that. We have to be signing players for the here and now. Otherwise, there is going to be a time where we turn around and struggle, really struggle. And then we look at that and we've got all these players that don't want to play in the Championship. We're stuck.
Is the idea, and obviously I'm not sure you'd even know the answer, but the way I'd look at it is I do wonder if the Albion look at it and think, worst case scenario, we go down. We have a group of players that excel in the Championship, and we can end up selling our best assets if we need to and come back up with the ones that we've invested in. So, like, for example, okay, Mopai doesn't want to stay in the Championship because he's just been been relegated with Brighton. He wants out. Trossard wants out. Bissouma obviously wants out. All these players will want to bounce, and we'll sell them all, and we'll make a bunch of money off of them, which will help. But you're then looking at, a front line of Zakiri and Sima and Connolly. Like, all of those players are probably going to do really well in the Championship. Then you're looking at that midfield, and you've got, this whole group of really young, talented midfielders that aren't going to get a move anywhere else because they haven't proven themselves just yet. Like your Caicedos, maybe Modder, but I don't think we'd let him go anyway. But those kind of players that are just going to rule the roost in the Championship. Is the hope that worst case scenario, we go down, we can afford to lose our best players because we're going to plug and play with players that are better than the Championship already or as good as the Championship and come straight back up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure, but that would be a huge risk.
I think so too. But
you look at it and think, none of these players you're talking about have had any Championship football before, and it's probably the hardest league in the world to get out of. So in terms of having that as a strategy, I'd definitely say that's not the right way to go. They're all talking about this top 10 side, and I've said this over and over again, that until they sign 20, 25 goals a season, man, they're not getting anywhere near that top 10, regardless of whether they sign the best back 5 or back 4 in the world. They're not getting anywhere. They need goals, and without the goals, that they're gonna struggle to really improve on any positions they've done in the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, I think the strategy is to kind of, well, the external strategy is definitely to get better and to continue to improve the players they've got there. I think they are looking for that. Well, I know they are looking for that striker, but they're only willing to part way with their money if it's the right one. Until then, I think we're just going to be, unfortunately, it's not what I want to say as a Brighton fan and as a journalist, that we're just going to be continuously going around in a little bit of a merry-go-round until that happens.
I think that's where that comes in, isn't it? Is that, it's interpreted as a negative approach when we're talking about the top 10, and that's sort of being fed by the club in terms of that's where we want to be. If we continue to invest in the off chance or the likelihood of us going down and then subsequently having to come back up in that route, you're not talking about a top 10 strategy there. You're talking about a contingency plan, which seems to be the priority. And because we can't get priority 1, priority 2 is to stabilize and to find investment for the future. So I guess it's nothing that Brighton in terms of the club can control, but in terms of you're missing the first priority of the striker, they're still doing the right thing and investing in the future, but it suddenly looks like the first priority. So from a fan looking inwards, it looks like they're investing in the wrong places, when in actual fact, we just can't find that elusive striker, or we're just not willing to part with the money that we need to. So I guess there's that aspect as well, especially from I guess from a marketing perspective or from an insight perspective, that I think people are getting confused in terms of what the priority is. The priority has always been the striker, but just because we're doing the second priority, it doesn't mean that we still don't want to get to the top 10. So it looks counterintuitive, but I think we're just doing the next best thing because we can't find the striker.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They've always been looking. They've been looking for the last 2-3 seasons. You think you can tell by the Welbeck signing after deadline day last year that they were continuously looking for a striker even after that window. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed him. If they didn't think they had enough in that area, they wouldn't have even looked to him. But yeah, it must be frustrating for even the guys posting the signings on Brighton's socials saying, yeah, we signed this bloke, but you won't see him for another year. Must be frustrating even for them. But yeah, you're right. Every team has to sign players for the future. They can't just sign everyone for the here and now. It's frustrating for every fan and including myself to not see these top players coming in, especially after we sold Ben White for such a sum of money this summer. Everyone thought that it was going to be the time to really kind of buy that man that we all needed. It wasn't to be, but they've still got that money. They hasn't gone. So hopefully January or the following summer will be the time that we finally get that elusive striker.
That you mentioned the Brighton admin. I think my favourite moment from the transfer window was pretty much at 11 p.m. They send out a tweet and it was Moises Caicedo going off to be a shot in Belgium. Everyone was hoping for sort of like Robinho-esque announcement of Man City, and we just know someone else has gone out on loan. You raised a good point there about January. I think everyone's sort of predicting the end of the world after not signing a striker. The January transfer window is less than 4 months away.
Absolutely.
I think it goes back to another point that you just made, which was, about we want this particular type of striker. Well, yeah, and that's everyone in the Premier League, bar like 2 teams at the moment. Everyone wants a 20-goal-a-year Premier League striker. And we have that cap on how much we want to spend, and then secondarily how much we want to spend on the wages, right? Because we're not going to go and give them those big wage packets. So it's a real challenge when you start to think, well, we want what everyone else wants, but we're also going to spend way less on it. And that's obviously where you see us like farming these more Eastern European clubs and things like that. But how much do you think that plays into it in terms of the challenges that we face in terms of getting what everyone else wants?
Absolutely. And Brighton are notoriously not willing to get themselves into a bidding war with other clubs. They hate that kind of thing. And if someone else kind of comes in for that player, they'd rather a player that wants to be at the club and choose Brighton over the other ones. So that is one of the reasons why they do go to these kind of lesser known leagues where they can kind of pick up a bargain without anyone else bidding in for them. Whether it works or not, it started to work a little bit better than it did in the years of your hand bashes and etc. But Izquierdo, I thought Izquierdo was a great player, but
so sad about him.
So many injuries. Lacadia, the list goes on.
There's our 20 goal a season guys here.
Yeah, Well, I mean, I think he's leaving, but the Turkish league is still an option for him. So
Yeah.
we can see. But yeah, you're right. It's not easy to find that player that, one, no one else wants, that's good enough, two, that is within our wage and our structures in terms of financially, and three, fits what we want as a striker. And it's almost like if you go on Football Manager and try and type in all them, you're not getting anyone.
It just comes up with Darwin Nunez.
And it says 60 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's not ideal, but it's unfortunately how they want to act. And if they want to sign that striker, then they'll make sure that they get the right one.
I want to ask one more about a particular striker. Edouard went on and on and on and on about this entire thing. And again, when we're talking from a journalism perspective, there was not a peep down south, and then in Scotland they were going absolutely nuts. So I guess you were aware that there was absolutely no news coming from the club, but there's that distortion from different sources that feeds the social media train again. I mean, obviously Palace had ended up with him. Hopefully he doesn't do that well naturally, but in terms of, what was the story from your perspective there? Were you being fed different information from different sources?
No, not at all. It was completely that they weren't interested in him. Obviously, from my experience within a transfer window, within journalism, that screams to me agents. It screams to me that an agent is trying to get their player out of a certain club, and they're using names to kind of build up interest, and it worked in the end because obviously Palace got him. He was Palace's second choice. They wanted Eddie Nketiah, but Brighton again wanted Eddie Nketiah at the start of the summer. But they tried to use him as part of the Ben White deal, but didn't happen. Nketiah then, Palace then went in £15 million bid for Nketiah, and then didn't get that one over the line, so went to Edouard next. But for me, Edouard was never one that Brighton were looking at.
Yeah, I think everyone sort of knew that deep down, but I think everyone was just so itching for a striker that they would just take anyone.
It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? It's the hope that kills you. You see a name, you just want to you just constantly type in Edouard transfer or Edouard Brighton and put it and see what's happening.
I think we can give you a break now, Aidan, with the transfer talk. I think as an Albion fan, let's bring you back to the Albion. 6 points from 9, opening 3 games of the season. I think you're mental if you're not happy with it, because I think everybody expected at best 6 points. That was a great result for us. Yeah. Obviously, we are a bit weak depth-wise across the squad in some spots with the amount of loans we've sent out, but do you think that do you think it's going to be a case of there are 3 worse teams than us this year, or do you think we're going to be comfortable, or do you think we could be in trouble?
I think, if I'm honest, I think there's 3 worse teams, definitely 3 worse teams than us in there. And where we finished completely depends on, first of all, how fit Danny Welbeck stays. Second of all, how many goals Neil Maupay scores, because if he scores 8 again like last season, we're not getting very far. If he scores 15 to 20, then we could be 13th, 12th, 13th instead of 16th, 17th. But yeah, I think the signing of Cucurella is massive. If I'm honest, I think he's a fantastic player. He can play on the wing. He can play at wing back. He can play as a fullback if we play a 4. He's a great player, and he's like almost the left-sided version of Tariq Lamptey. But obviously, without Lamptey at the moment, which is a big issue, especially with Gross getting absolutely shown up by Damari Gray last week or the following week. But yeah, I think we'll be okay. And 6 points out of 9 is great. But you're always looking at the next one. You've got Brentford away, and that you need to look at that about at least getting a point into that game. But there's going to be a lot of games where we're going to be in disarray, or not in disarray, when the fan base are going to be in disarray when they lose 2-0 away at City or something like that. But we've got to realise that there's some bigger teams in the league than us. And we just have to kind of keep our aims realistic for this season, considering the squad we have.
I think there was I think not so much a rumor, it came from Potter's mouth himself, but I don't know if you're able to know whether it was true or not, given we're a week into the international break. He said he was intending to have Lamptey back in full first team training with the international break coming up. Do you know if that's happened or not?
Yeah, I don't know if it's happened. I know he's been kind of in and around the first team training period for the last month or so. Obviously, I only see in terms of pictures and videos what you guys see on socials, but I know that it was so frustrating when during COVID, when every game he'd pull up with a hamstring issue. That they used to bring him off at half time and just kind of bring him on the next game and just kept letting it happen. Then you just know that there's something seriously wrong with his hamstrings, with a guy that young keep pulling up with the same injury. I know every time that they keep trying to put him back into training that he keeps pulling up again. I haven't heard anything this time in terms of the last month. He's been doing bits and pieces of first team training. But yeah, Brighton aren't notoriously the greatest side for being with their clarity on injury issues. They kind of tell you it's a week and then end up 6 months later they're still out. But yeah, everyone hopes Tariq Lamptey's back. He was electric when he played for us. When he was fit, flying down that right, he just brings a lot of balance to our side that we don't have at the moment. You look at Gross, yeah, he's great. He creates a lot, but he can't defend for one. He doesn't got the pace, so if he gets beaten, that's done. And yeah, I think Lamptey's he can score, he can get in the box, he's direct. He's completely different kettle of fish to anything else we have, apart from Cucurella now.
I think I speak for everybody on here that I think with a fit, if you get Cucurella and Lamptey playing together and fit with that back three as intended, right? Like without Dunker, Webster or someone hurt, you're probably looking at just having those two alone, which is mental really because they're wing backs, they're not like they're strikers. But like I think having those two fit long term alone can probably turn 3 or 4 draws into wins alone. Like you're probably talking 6 to 10 points gained simply by having those two fit long term, like which is mental really.
Absolutely. You look at games that Lamptey played before. He just, like Newcastle to me, just strings out completely. Just against San Maximum, he absolutely had him on toast the whole game. And it's just like those kind of things. That's what Brighton lack at the moment. We don't have, even like the second half of last season, we got some better performances and more points, but we don't have that direct man that can change a game within seconds. You look at the teams around us. Newcastle, for instance, San Maximum, as I mentioned. Even Southampton have players that can create a little bit better than we have without Lamptey and without Cucurella, the new guy. But I think they make a huge difference to what we're trying to do, especially I think even more attacking wise than defensively, if anything. But yeah, it's just going to be one of those things for Lamptey that everyone prays for him to be back in the coming weeks, but only time will tell.
We talked about the importance of that right and left wing back position in Potter's scheme and how disappointing it was like last game where we started with Gross and Modder as our right and left wing backs, which are, pretty significantly out of position and not massively well suited to the role. And then there's this kind of surprise why we didn't then, draw or win the game. It's like, well, if you don't have the bodies to put there that can do a task, then this is what happens. And I think what you said with Cucurella is that's what we're all hoping for, because even the eyeball test and the stats in our first 3 games, we're so heavy on the right side in terms of where we push the ball up the field, and the left side kind of gets left out, pun intended. Well, we've got sort of March, and then McAllister didn't get the ball hardly at all in the times he played. And he was even taken off in the half time against Everton. So you think part of this with Cucurella is trying to balance out that whole setup so we're not so right side dominant?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think we know Solly March is a top player. He's kind of grown into that left wing back role, but he can play further up. If I think he'd prefer to play further up, if I'm honest. But especially against Everton, Moda hasn't got a left foot, so it seems ridiculous to have a guy without a left foot playing at left wing back, trying to give width to the side, because every time he got the ball, he came back, and then there was just Alan or Decore picking up the pieces. And every time it went down Gross's side, and Digne is one of the best left backs in the world, I'd say. PSG were after him early this window. And yeah, he's a quality player, and against someone that lacks pace like Gross does. All he needs to do is look at his feet and make sure he doesn't get beaten. It's quite simple. I know a lot of people fall for Gross's Cruyff turns, but I can read it off the pitch. I don't know how people still don't. But yeah, it's a weird one. I think, absolutely. Cucurella brings a lot of balance to that side. You look at it, I'm surprised that Karbownik was allowed to leave before Cucurella was done. Because Cucurella only got his, they only paid his release clause after Karbownik went. So it was an interesting decision, but obviously they must have had it in their minds that they were going to pay it. Imagine if the medical failed or something like that, then they would have had a good time with no left backs for all season, which would have been great. But Cucurella had a great time.
Yeah, they were trying to, seemingly what we heard, and maybe you can attest to whether this is true, they were trying to get the club to accept a bid with money paid over time as opposed to just paying La Liga the release clause, and then finally sort of gave up at the end, it seemed like.
Yeah, I think it was trying to, I think from what I saw and what I've heard and is that Cucurella, they wanted Cucurella from the start. That was their number one target, left wing back. They wanted to, as you say, pay in installments, pay like a smaller fee up front, and then kind of pay it throughout the next couple of years. I think that almost was a ploy in terms of to try and find that striker, to try and have that extra money to then use on, say, Nunez, if say Benfica cut down their price, or they were able to work out a deal with them. And then when it became apparent that they couldn't, then they had that money from Ben White. It's 30 million up front from Ben White, so they have 30 million now. They just spent the 18 on, or 15 on Cucurella, and then 7 or so on Simmer and loaned him out. I think they've still got probably about just over 10 million to, and then they've obviously got 20 million guaranteed from Ben White's deal. So they'll probably have about another 30 million in the coffin at some point.
And that's not even thinking about Mwepu, who I think he just scored for Zambia, didn't he?
This captain.
Yeah.
He's. I think he's going to be a great player. You look how athletic he was. I was at Luton in pre-season. I know it's only Luton, but the way he's finished that off, his goal in the first half was outstanding. And timed to run well, especially considering he hadn't really been in and around the first team for long at that time. Another time when Ostergaard, we're playing a back four in that game, and Ostergaard went running on a run. Obviously, again, and Mwepu only been there for a few weeks. Just sat in for Ostergaard centre off, and something like that for me is huge in terms of just tactical nous without kind of having to do anything with the ball. He's going to be a good player. Just needs a little bit of time to settle coming from different leagues.
I think from the tweet I'd read from the Zambian national team, it sounds like he is intended to be their long-term captain, which, if so, is huge for a player that young. I know that the majority of their squad coming through is like a new young generation, but I can only imagine what that's going to do for his mentality, coming back to Albion. He's got that move to England. He's immediately been made long-term captain of his national nation for and he's 22, 23. I can imagine that's going to be, he's going to be absolutely loving life. So
leadership qualities as well. That's another thing that Brighton like. Young players with leadership qualities, obviously, is what any team likes. But to have that is amazing.
It makes the Africa Cup of Nations a bit of a worry for us looking ahead, though. We lose Bissouma and.
It's a difficult one with Bissouma. He hasn't really played too much with Mali in recent years, so potentially that he might not go. I don't know how Mali acts. I don't think he's played in the last 3 seasons. So if he was to go, it'd be a kind of a bit of a left field call up. I think it's more his choice than theirs. I think if they wanted him, if the country wanted him to play, then they'd have him, but I think he doesn't really want to play for them. But African Cup of Nations could do something different to him.
Yeah, I think from a couple of the reports I'd read years ago under Houghton, I think that he had a bit of a falling out. Maybe his family even had a falling out with the Malian national team. There was something went on there a couple of years ago, and clearly it hasn't fixed itself yet because he isn't getting called up. But I'm sure, like you said, selfishly that works for us. So we get
absolutely. Would love to keep Bissouma during African Cup of Nations. It's the last thing you want, him absolutely bossing an African Cup of Nations in a January transfer window as well.
Could we ask you about Basuma? It's obviously transfer related, but obviously a lot of chat going around about how, we talked about this last time, how keeping Basuma was the win of the transfer window more than anything else in some ways. Doesn't have a ton of time left on his contract. How top of mind is a new contract for him, and how willing would he be to sign it?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. They're both parties are pretty just chilled on how they are at the moment. They have, well, obviously we know Basuma's respect for Brighton and the manager. I think every Brighton fan would have Basuma sign a new 85-year contract tomorrow. But he's
86, hopefully. But yeah,
86, is it? Yeah. But there's nothing in the pipeline at the moment. Hopefully, as a fan base and as a club, they realise that before January they sit down and do some talks. Otherwise, it's going to be I think quite difficult to keep him. Especially if not January, then the following summer with 1 year left in his deal, you're not going to get too much money for him. He's not on Mbappe, where people will start bidding 150 million to try and get him early. It's going to be an interesting year for Basuma if he keeps performing the way he is. If I'm honest, I'm a Brighton fan. If I'm honest, he deserves to be playing Champions League football. He's too good for a lower league, for a lower top bottom kind of 6-7 team. I think Brighton, if they want to keep him, they need to improve their squad. They need to kind of get up into that top 10 and show him that that's what we're all about. I think if we were kind of competing a little bit more, then he would stay, because he, as I say, he loves the city, he loves his teammates, he loves the club, he loves the fans. You see after every game, he loves the fans. But I think it's just about competing and him wanting to play at the highest level possible.
Yeah,
I was speaking to a good friend of mine at the beginning of this window who's kind of in on that kind of transfer stuff, and he was telling me that Basuma was leaving this summer. So I think it's a big thing that he stayed, and hopefully we can kind of tie him down. But it's going to be an interesting, like, everyone's going to be holding their breath this year before the next, especially the next summer, because as I say, well, January as well, because a year and a half is not too much difference to a year. If he's not looking to sign a contract by then we need to try and weigh up whether we cash in on him, get 20 million or whatever we can for him at that point, or we take the extra year and just let him go on a free the following.
Yeah, it makes 1 year fee would not be fun with Basuma, because like you say, it probably would be more around that 20 million mark versus what you would hope to get. You have to imagine, maybe this is wrong, you have to imagine that the Ben White money helped the club not feel like they needed to cash in on Basuma this season. Absolutely,
that is the big thing. They were never gonna let both of them go in the same window, especially with the season that it is, with COVID and with everything like that. It's difficult to buy players in, to just have that kind of, as I mentioned earlier, logistically to sign loads of players is not the easiest thing, especially from overseas, which is where Brighton tend to do a lot of their business from. But yeah, as soon as Ben White was done, it was looking increasingly unlikely that Basuma was going to follow. But for me, at the beginning of the window, it was Basuma that was more likely to leave the club than Ben White. So it's obviously a transfer window takes its turns, but yeah, it's one that definitely we need to keep an eye on with Basuma. Hopefully he signs a new deal, but I'm not holding my breath, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too much longer, Aidan. You've been very generous with your time. Craig, Adam, do you have any other questions, thoughts, feelings, concerns that you want to throw out there?
No, just a quick prediction on where we'll finish this season will be enough for me, Aidan, mate.
Yeah, I think probably I'm looking at 14th, 15th, I think would represent a good season. I think we can get there. If as I said earlier, it depends completely on our attacking options. If Welbeck's out for a majority of the season, we're reliant on Maupay and Connolly. I think we're looking more 16th, 17th. But yeah, we have to hope that with the current crop of squad and with a fully fit Lamptey and Cucurella down that wing, we can kind of finish the top half of top 10.
Yeah.
My last question is a 10-second one. Were we ever properly in for Dan James, and was it close?
Not properly in. They obviously the Potter links with James is always going to be there or thereabouts. Potter loves Dan James, we know that. As soon as they keep in touch with him and his team and Man United, etc. But as soon as it was told that Leeds were going to spend that amount of money on him, then it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It was an outrageous sum of money, really.
Right, it only goes to you can only say that after if he scores 20 goals in the next season, then we're going to say it's a great bit of business. But yeah, I think he's the Man United tax has come in big there.
Awesome.
Cool. Aidan, we'll let you go. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and take care of yourself, and good luck for the rest of the season with your work. We'll be keeping an eye, and we'll make sure to inundate you with messages in January.
Cheers, lad.
Thanks so much, sir.
No worries. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye. Aidan J. Wood. Good lad. Good find, Adam.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. Really nice guy. And knows his stuff clearly. It's always nice to have that, because we can talk as fans all we want about the transfer window, and he can answer and verify or unverify those things in like half a second. Like, no, that was never happening, or yes, that. Think about how nice it would have been for to know Edouard this whole way through. He's like, no, we never even looked at him. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you said, it's the hope that kills you, isn't it? Because we were told by like verified sources. I think it's more of a case of, okay, who's verified and who's not at this point. And Aidan's come clutch a number of times, and it's nice to have him on and sort of have that conversation with them, not only just in terms of what is he dealing with on a transfer deadline basis, but also like how he conducts himself and how he uses his contacts to be as good as he is. So yeah, really good chat.
I think it helps, given that he's based out of London as well. You're going to get a lot of information traveling through, being so close to the capital, which helps, I think. I can't imagine that you'd be getting the same amount of information running through in like Southampton. You know what I mean? Like it would be a bit tougher to get some Brighton rumours there. I meant to ask him how he feels about the rise of Fabrizio Romano. Maybe I'll have to message him.
Yeah, he's sort of come out of nowhere, really, in like 2 years. And suddenly he's now become the biggest voice, isn't it? It's a little bit crazy.
And he knows everything. 5.2 million followers.
Yeah, it's just snowballed, isn't it? As soon as he started to break news and people listen to him, then every single agent in the world just pushes all their news to him. So, yeah. Crazy.
We are stateside Seagulls he said he'll be here at 12, so hopefully it won't be too many more minutes, and he'll be in.
I'm assuming this is a bit we're going to cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better though, mate.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll tell you what, that was a really not fun 48 hours. Holy shit.
I'm glad it was only 48 hours. Like, I think the little bug that I had a couple of weeks ago, I was out for the count for a good 3-4 days. I think I think it was the second one we ever did together. Or was that last week? I think it might even have been last week. Like, I was coming arse end of a really bad cold as well, and I was like trying to fight back the nasally voice that I had. I was like, it's like I can't miss the second one that we ever do. I was like, I need to battle through this.
It's tough, isn't it? It's like you said, I think you're right in that when we, like, because we've all been stuck in our homes and hiding out for quite a while, our immune systems are completely shot. As soon as you get something, it's just brutalizes you. But yeah,
it was so nice just not to be ill for like 18 months in terms of and I don't think anyone really thought about it, because I was speaking to my parents like the other week about it, and I was like, you guys haven't had a cold, and I can guarantee that you haven't had a cold in like a year. And then all of a sudden, as soon as you do fall ill, everything's the dreaded coronavirus, and it's like, what? I don't think so. I think it's just you haven't had a normal flu in like a year and a half, and your body's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's mental. And even better, they're bringing us all back to the office on Tuesday.
It's
going to be wonderful.
Mandated?
Yeah, the office has said that we're all coming back, no matter what.
Do you have to wear masks or no?
There's a mask mandate in the city, so I would hope that they would be demanding.
What's the point of going to an office wearing a mask?
Mate,
Like, just stay at home.
I messaged them. I messaged the leaders and everything, and I was like, "What the fuck are you thinking?" And they were like, "Well, our reasoning continues to be the same, that we can collaborate better in person." And I'm like, "I haven't been at work for 18 months. Like, what? Like, my question isn't whether we can collaborate better in person. My question is why now? Like, why now? Like, why not January 1st, 2022? Like, why not last May when it was like way lower, like than it is now? Like, why now?" And they didn't answer me, so that's unsurprising.
Because the real estate investment is looking bad on the balance sheet.
Yup, that would be my guess, considering that the building is owned. It's not leased or anything like that. It's our building. I would imagine that's exactly it. But it's pathetic. The only good thing I will say is they're only having us in 1 day a week. We can come in as many days as we want, but our minimum is we have to come in once a week. So
that's weird. That's even weirder to me. Like,
it's dumb. It's absolutely mental, isn't
because especially if you don't cross over on the 1 day with the collaboration team, like it doesn't.
Yeah. Like I have projects with one particular project manager, and we have like 3 or 4 of them to talk about, and I'm going in Wednesday and she's going in Thursday, and we're not going to collaborate at all. So
pointless. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
as soon as they put the mask mandate back here, like everyone that was going to the office, the rare 2 or 3 people that they were like, well, forget it then. It's just going to be empty again. It's just baffling to me.
Speaking of, here is Paul Dorsey with Stateside Seagulls. Hey, Paul,
hey guys.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all, thank you.
Hey.
Good
How's it
afternoon.
going?
Where are you off to, Paul? You're driving around?
I am currently in the parking lot of a vineyard. So,
Wow. All right. Nice.
yep. Gonna do this and then
you're spending your
drink
Labor
some
Day
wine.
weekend well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's raining here, so that's why I'm not outside enjoying the wine right now. But
I thought you were based somewhere where it isn't very vineyard heavy. Are you on vacation, or is this just a?
I am in Westminster, Maryland right now, so it's about 45 minutes away from Baltimore.
There's wine there.
There is.
Yeah,
There is.
Is it good? Oh, you can tell us afterwards, I suppose.
We've been here before. It's good, and then it doesn't really matter if it's good or not after a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fair.
But
After
it
you've
is good.
tasted 3 of them, they're all good.
exactly, it is
Yeah.
good though. So
no, awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Of
We
course.
won't keep
Thank you for having
We won't
me.
keep you away from your wine for long. My goodness, feel guilty keeping you away every second now. Paul, you were one of my. I think you were my first guest ever on Together VHA.
was that? Oh yeah.
Yeah, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And Stateside Seagulls has obviously undergone quite the growth since then. Obviously aided by 4 seasons in the Premier League, now 5.
Yeah, that'll
and
definitely help.
Yeah, that huge global brand push, and the Albion being very intentional about pushing global branding with the signings they're making as well as the stuff they're doing. Do you want to just talk us through how that growth has looked to you all over at Stateside Seagulls? Because I mean, it was just you, right? Like to begin with, just starting out a little Twitter account and being like, "Yep, like this is it." Like, how has that
exactly.
evolved?
It's been absolutely wild. So I know that you guys have probably been there since the beginning, or at least very close to the beginning. So it started, as really just me behind a Twitter account, tweeting out whatever hot takes I had about Brighton with an American accent. And, before the promotion happened, we had 75 followers, not very big, just kind of hanging out, people chatting on Twitter. And in the past 5 seasons now, we're up to 1,400 followers. We have an actual website with a membership link. We have an Instagram. We have meetups in different cities across the country, so not just New York. I mean, we have the Brighton Bard in Tulsa. I never would have imagined we would have a Tulsa person as a Brighton fan. Chicago, obviously, Craig, Adam in New Jersey, Josh in Charlotte. I mean, it's crazy to see how big it's become, not just in the big cities, but across the country, and especially hopefully coming out of the pandemic, obviously Delta variant and everything aside, as we can get more watch parties going and more people into pubs and into, just getting an actual community going, not just through social media, but actually in person, it's destined to be massive, especially if we can keep the hot streak going in the Premier League.
Paul, you obviously, when you first came back on the first episode to get the BHA, I'm sure you guys talked a lot about this, but for the listeners that didn't tune into that first episode, why on earth did you become a Brighton fan?
I ask myself every day. I honestly, I can't remember the exact reason why I started to just casually follow Brighton. It was definitely one of those, I don't want to be a top 6 fan. I want to find something else. And I just kind of casually started following Brighton, probably because of, seeing them on FIFA and playing a game or something like that. But really it was that 2013 playoff semifinal. We won't talk about how that went, but that was the moment that really catalyzed for me. That was the moment where I was like, I'm not just going to casually follow this team. I'm in the community now. The fans, I would just kind of, again, have those hot takes on Twitter, and people would actually like respond to me and ask me why I'm following Brighton. I'm in the US. They don't know anybody other than in Sussex that knows about Brighton. And I had an emotional connection to a team I had never even watched before. I hadn't seen anybody in a Brighton shirt. And, in that loss against Palace, I broke down. I was mad. And I was like, this is my team now. Like, I got mad about a team I've never seen. It's 4,000 miles away. This is me now. So, and it's just, awesome. It's been that plus now actually being able to watch every weekend for the past 5 years. It's been wild, but yeah.
I think that's what a lot of, and just for the people that are listening outside of the US, a lot of people don't realize that in the US, we can watch any team every week. We can watch any game we want, and it costs like $5 a month to be able to do that, which when you're in the UK, that sounds like, oh, we're being screwed here. You are. So it's great. So you truly can follow a team here. Like, even, if you're not within the, the parameters of the Amex to go every week, you can follow Brighton more efficiently here than you can in most places in England, which is crazy.
I live 2 miles away from the Baltimore Orioles stadium, and I can't watch any of their games. And I can watch
probably a good thing.
Oh no, trust me. I am very happy about that. But yeah, I can watch every Brighton game, and I don't even have to pay because we have Xfinity internet, and that Peacock comes with it.
Crazy.
So yeah, I pay nothing, and I watch every Brighton game. Which, I'm so sorry, everybody in the UK. I really wish I could help you out.
Yeah, if only there was some kind of virtual private networks that people in the UK could use. If only,
I'm not a technology whiz. I'm not a technology whiz, but
would never recommend anything like that.
Never.
No, we here at Together BHA do not endorse.
Very straight-laced here.
You wouldn't download a car.
No.
Could you imagine that? I absolutely would. Like, you could download a car.
I'd download a car in an instant. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a stupid question from the first place, wasn't it?
Paul, I know you talked about making it so that you in-person watch parties, building out the fan base in the US is important. It's mutually beneficial to the club. Like, everyone wants to see that. I think also it's probably a surprise for a lot of the people in the UK to see someone so passionate that's built something with lots of fans in the US who otherwise, for the most part, the US is absolutely not a soccer first nation by any means, but there are some really ardent Brighton fans here.
Absolutely.
What do you want to do with Stateside? Where do you see it going in the next few years in terms of an evolution of the group?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that as I said before, the watch parties and having those in-person connections are really going to be helpful. I remember a couple of years ago when they had the Premier League live viewing parties with all the different teams and representation over here. That was really awesome to see, because it wasn't just on social media. People had Brighton stuff on that I didn't even know about, and I would meet them in DC or in Boston, and it was like, I didn't even know you existed. And that's how I felt when I was starting out as a Brighton fan. So having that push to not just be on social media, but to actually have those communities. That's really going to be important for us. And I think that having the connection that we have with the club, I mean, it's really nice knowing how passionate the club is about being a part of our relationship with the fans here, because I mean, there's a whole host of fans here that want to be part of the Brighton community, are actively trying to be part of the Brighton community. And, you know, a lot of teams might just push it aside as, you know, you're a customer, you'll buy a jersey. But Brighton has really brought us in and connected with us, helped us out, and tried to make us as much a part of the community as we possibly can, even if we're not in Sussex. And that's really been helpful in really just making my life easier as, you know, kind of the guy behind the Stateside Seagulls moniker, is just having that connection with the club, knowing that it's not just us doing our own thing here. It's having that connection with the club and knowing that we have the support to build it as much as we can, and have that mutually beneficial connection where, you know, we want to support the club and they want to support us.
And I guess this is less of a question and more to just build upon all that. And I think I'll speak for Josh and Adam at the same time in terms of, for those expats that, you know, have been in the UK and have supported Brighton from a certain age or, you know, a certain way. It's so nice just to, you know, moving for work and being in a different country with a different culture, and then still having that camaraderie and having a group that we can talk to, and we can talk about our passion for football and the club in terms of what we've done. So it's also building something from within, from what you've done, Paul, and building this out, but also being able to connect with us expats as well, who might be feeling a little bit disenfranchised or a bit disconnected from what we usually inherit, living in Brighton and supporting them. So supporting from afar and having this community as well for us is also so great. And, that's why I'm so appreciative of it. And I know Josh and Adam are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely just about making sure that, expats have that community over here. Obviously moving to another country is, I can't even imagine, but nerve-wracking to begin with. And then, having that community that you can come to, and, you might not be in the UK, but you have a Brighton community here. It's really important for me to keep that connection for you guys. And then also for, the American fans, bridging that connection between, we just support a team to we actually care about the team and the community, because it's so important to the history of the club and to everybody that is behind the club.
You were saying the relationship you have with the club already. What is it? I'm assuming your long-term goal is to have some kind of official affiliation with the club in terms of like being recognized as the Stateside Seagulls, like official fan groups. I know that Seagulls Down Under is, in fact, that's pretty much the only one I know of. That was a long time ago that they kind of officially kind of recognized as that kind of supporters group down in Australia. Do you have any idea what kind of hoops you're going to have to jump through, or like what things you're going to have to go through to be able to be officially kind of recognized, or with your communication already with the club, are you kind of already there?
So yeah, we've had just some initial talks, and obviously the pandemic has changed all of that. And the constant, are we going to go down or not, has been difficult to navigate, long-term plans necessarily with, supporters clubs, especially if it's, going to be, we're going down and then we may lose followers, who knows? So I'm sure that that's played a part in the official status not happening quite yet, but we have had conversations with the club. We have good relationships with the Albion, with Albion in the community, with, everybody really associated with the club. So we've had, those, kind of initial conversations, nothing ironed out quite yet, but, we're definitely open to having that become, us become the official supporters club in the US, if that would ever happen, and really just be that badge here in the US for Brighton and Hove Albion. The
one thing I will quickly say just about, I guess, the fan base, and this is the same at any football club, but it's very apparent with Brighton. There's this there's two parts of the fan base in some ways. There's the people that basically consider you can't be a fan unless you were sort of at the Goldstone. And then the other group that are a little bit more, let's say, modern, maybe is one way of putting it. I kind of want to say quickly in the defense, you being a fan of Brighton doesn't have a brand here. Like it's not like Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal, especially, that they have these global or Americanized brands here. Like being in the US, like we see the clubs, the people that wear the shirts that are football fans. You see the same 3 or 4 different teams, the ones that have that established marketing presence here. Brighton does not have that. So for Paul and the rest of the US-based stateside Seagulls to basically pick up Brighton to be their club, there's no glory hunting here. Like there's no like this is people that have picked out a club to be passionate about and support. So I'd say that it's easy for certain fan groups to be like, oh, these people in America, they can't be real fans because they weren't at X, Y, and Z at a certain date. Well, I would say on the other side of things, you absolutely can be, because the fact that you've gone out of left field and you've backed a club that for otherwise you have no reason to, and I think that's commendable.
Yeah, I always love those comments. And it's not, I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I mean, just from the very low level of it, I couldn't buy a Brighton jersey here. For instance, I couldn't find one even if I wanted to. I have to go out of my way to get it from the club.
It's hard to be a fan.
It's hard to get there and then to stick with it. I mean, obviously there will be people who will come and go if we go down and whatnot. And I get that because it's harder to watch and all that. But to even take that initial leap and become a Brighton fan, especially if you became a fan in the championship days, like I did, I mean, that was hard enough as it was. But even in the Premier League, it's not an easy task because, again, even though you can watch us every weekend, nobody talks about us. We've been in the Premier League 5 years. We still barely get coverage. We get the games, and that's about it. So you have to try to be a Brighton fan.
Yeah.
And it's really, that's why it's so important for me to have that connection with the community in Brighton too, because I don't want it to just be that we're just kind of watching a team like Manchester United. We're just watching a team and, who cares if they win? Okay, great. If they lose, whatever. I don't care about the community. I just care about the team. That's not what I want this to be. And that's not what Stateside Seagulls is. We have that connection with the community because that has been important in our growth and important in, people coming over here and, asking where to watch a game. And that's just really important to me, especially, and to the group as a whole. It's just, having that connection and making sure that people are aware that this is not something that you can just kind of, half-ass. It's year in or year out.
And it's quite funny, isn't it? Because Brighton definitely have an identity back home, and that is of a community-based club. And I think, obviously, ironically, the Goldstone days is what drew that community to be so hardcore in terms of what that branding is. And it helps that Bloom is obviously a fan guy because he lived through it with everybody else. And it's funny because Adam, you're right. It's generally a specific crowd that are that way. You can't be a Brighton fan if you're an American or a Japanese person or a Korean. Like, you can't be a Brighton fan if you weren't at the Goldstone, whatever it is. And it's funny because the Stateside Seagulls and what you're talking about is very much the heartbeat of what Brighton is back home. So it's even funnier that like you're mirroring their values and like without even intending to, really, which says that although the Albion doesn't have a brand, because you're trying and you're working and understanding what the club is, it just naturally flows through you anyway, right? Like it's not so much that kind of, and there are plenty of teams, with no disrespect to them, that are smaller clubs in the Premier League that don't have that community. They just don't. Like, they have their own, but like it's not that community based, like that deeper connection with people. So it's interesting to see that you're basically mirroring what they founded in the first place, and some people still don't like it.
Yeah, and I totally understand the supporting a team from afar and kind of just watching the games and not actually being part of the community. I'm a Saints fan, and I have been
to clarify, you mean the New Orleans Saints? Yeah, because you just a bunch of people just had a connection.
Everybody in the UK was like, "Now wait a minute." I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I've never been to Louisiana. I watch the games and that's about it. So I'm kind of like the Manchester United fan for the NFL. But for Brighton, it's almost like the Orioles for me. It feels like my hometown team. And that's just because the community has just always been behind me, always supported me in being a fan. And then, obviously as Stateside Seagulls has grown, building that over here, it's felt like, and I that's what I want it to be for everybody who comes on board with Stateside Seagulls, is for it to be like their hometown club, even if they're from here.
Paul, quickly, just on the status of the club, the situation, what were your thoughts on the transfer window? How do you think the season's going to play out?
This may not go over well. I thought that the transfer window was okay. It was fine. Mm-hmm. I would have liked a striker, but I'm not heartbroken over it. I think that last season showed that, I don't want to go too far, but it can't get that much worse than last season in terms of not being able to score. So, and Maupay, thank God he wasn't hurt too bad. Looks like he can play. He's scored 2 goals already. Danny Welbeck maybe hopefully comes back at some point soon. He can score goals. Was kind of shocked to see so many players leave on loan, or just in general. Obviously getting the wage bill down is huge, but I was kind of shocked to see Zakiri leave, especially just to have that extra depth going forward. But otherwise, I like Mwepu coming in. That's a really good addition. Having Sima come in, just, obviously he's going back out on loan, but having, more of an idea of forward options going forward. I thought that, I think that the meltdown on Twitter on transfer window day was a little harsh. I thought that it was fine. It could have been better, but it wasn't as bad as everybody was making it out to be.
Yeah, your thought about Zakiri, maybe you wouldn't have wanted to see him go out alone. We just had Aidan J. Wood on, who was covering a lot of the transfer window, and is a big Brighton fan. And he said the same thing. He's like, I was surprised Connolly didn't go out on loan and we didn't keep Andy Zakiri, which is, I wonder, I'd be interested to see what the Brighton fan base would think about that as a general question.
Maybe it has to do more because he hasn't really been playing in a forward role recently. It's like, I think he was against Cardiff. But other than that, Potter always moves people around, so it's hard to tell where anybody's going to start on a given day. But maybe that's part of it. I really don't know. But it definitely is shocking that Zakiri left on loan and Connolly stayed. But there's a plan, I guess. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We hope. No, there's a plan. There's definitely a plan. They're too, they sometimes, I feel sometimes they look too far into the long-term plan than the short one. So they definitely have some long-term plans in motion. Thank you for coming on, Paul. I suppose now is as good a time as any to talk about the kind of the partnership that we're throwing up as well.
Yes.
With Stateside Seagulls and Together BHA. Paul, you ever wanted to start a podcast?
I have thought about it. I've kicked the can down the road quite a while, but I'll leave it to the professionals.
That's a brave
Who are they?
So yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything either, Paul, but we've been talking behind the scenes, and the decision has come together. A good one that I'm very happy with. I'm sure that most of us are, I hope. That Together BHA and Stateside Seagulls are kind of officially kind of affiliated in terms of the podcast of Stateside Seagulls and the spot to be. And Together BHA is likewise the spot for if you ever need anything from Stateside Seagulls, we can kind of boost your questions about going to a New York bar or a Baltimore bar or something like that. And any guests that want to come on, if you're listening in the US, Stateside Seagulls, you have a fast track to the front. Any kind of deals, events, get-togethers, parties that Paul was just talking about, we will be talking about those to kick off pretty much every podcast. So if you want to keep up with any of that stuff, this is the spot to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that, yeah, I completely agree with all that. I've been an avid listener of Together BHA since the very beginning. Obviously, I was on the first episode. I honestly forgot about that. So, well, I didn't forget that I was on the pod, but I forgot I was the first guest. So, but yeah, I listen all the time, and having you three guys in the States too, that's really cool for me, especially being Stateside Seagulls and having that connection with you guys. It's really nice to see that it's kind of all coming to fruition, and I'm really excited to see what the connection is going to be like going forward, and hopefully this connection goes as well as I hope Brighton does this season. So the XG in this partnership is going to be through the roof. Let's see if we can actually put the goals in, though.
Yeah. You guys also need to get some of that merch back. Stateside Seagulls, if you don't know, do awesome scarves.
Yes.
And I need to get some of those in. The winters in New Jersey area, New York area, especially where Craig is in Chicago, are not great for the people in the UK.
No, they're bad. They're rough. I've never been to Chicago, but I've heard stories. I went to college in Missouri, so
it's chilly.
It's hectic.
Yeah.
Baltimore can get pretty bad.
Chilly is not the way one describes the Chicago winter.
Yeah, I mean, Paul sorted me out with a nice sweatshirt with Stateside Seagulls on the front as well. So I'll start wearing that to these pods as well. So I've got that. Yes. I'll grab a scarf. I'll probably need 2 or 3, but that's only a good thing.
Meanwhile, Josh is down here in tropical Charlotte. So
yeah, like sometimes it's not a good thing. Sometimes we're just starting to get cooler nights, and like it's just a lot. Like it's the humidity down here that makes it 5 times worse. Yeah. Although I did go to Chicago in January a couple of years ago, and that wasn't much more optimal.
I do have to say the only 2 times I've been to Brighton were in January, and that was a mistake. That was a mistake.
Paul, we don't want to hold you off any longer. I'm sure you're gagging for some wine. So enjoy your Sunday afternoon.
Thank you.
And have plenty on us.
Absolutely.
Enjoy yourself, and you've got a nice sleep in tomorrow because we're a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, enjoy that famous Maryland wine.
I will make sure to do that.
Cheers, Paul.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Paul Dorsey, Stateside Seagulls. What a guy.
What a guy.
There you go. It's a hell of a thing to make yourself a Brighton fan in sort of pit of misery, playoff loss, and then create a supporters group in a country that for the most part doesn't care about football. It's a hell of an achievement. So kudos to him.
It really is. It's a lot of effort over here, especially when he was in the championship. Episode 15 was the episode we had Stateside Seagulls on, the first guest of the show. He also shares his first game he went to. It has been over, and if I recall correctly, it was Blackburn Rovers away in January. So yeah, it's definitely worth listening to just for that sadness in his voice.
Blackburn Rovers away. Why would anyone do that to themselves?
Especially coming over from the US. Like, oh, where did you go in England? Did you go to London? Did you see the Tower of London? Did you see the jewels? Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you go to Stonehenge? And I went Blackburn. I went to Blackburn away.
Yeah, that's commitment. That is commitment right there.
It really is. Fellas, have you got anything else to add?
No, I don't have anything else. It was good to catch up, obviously, with Aidan and Paul. So really good.
Yeah, good from my side.
Awesome. Brentford away next weekend. I think we're probably all hoping for 3 points, right? At worst, a point. Score predictions before we bounce.
I'm going to go for. The optimist in me thinks that we can get 3 points here, but they're on the rise. They've started really well. I'll go for a 1-1 draw. We'll get that. We've still. I don't think Lamptey's going to be back. I don't think we have a right wing back there, and I think it'll be Gross again. They've got a little bit of a boy as well. Second ever game in the Premier League at home. I think the novelty's still going to be there, but hopefully we can grab a 1-1 draw or sneak the win.
I'm going to randomly go for 2-2. Don't ask me how I got to that, but that's what I'm going with.
I'm going to go with 1-0 to us. I think they've only scored 3 all season, so they're not bagging loads. Although they do have a really good defense. They've only conceded 1 all season, but they also did play some very easy games, Arsenal, Palace, players like that. So it's a bit.
I like that Arsenal just considered easy. It's just easy now.
even without taking the piss, like they really didn't have Lacazette or Aubameyang, so like they really were
actually
super
easy.
weak up front. Yeah. Defensively they were hilarious, but like up top, it's less funny because they had nothing. I'm gonna say 1-0 to us. All right, fellas. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your long weekend. I know I will. And we'll speak again next weekend.
Awesome.
Cheers, boys.
Thanks, guys. Speak later.
Bye.